Hello, everyone from Chelsea Fan TV. Welcome back to another episode of 3 Points Perspective with myself, Charlie, and Nina. Listen, guys, do you know, there's always something to talk about with Chelsea, and we were talking about this before we started recording. What are we going to speak about today? And when you look at it at first, you go, well, there's no matches on, nothing like that, but plenty of things happening in a short space of time, guys. So this is almost like an instant reaction for some of the things we're going to speak about. You'll be able to see them below. But we'll start off with the main thing that people, we've been crying out for a striker for a long, long time. And there is a potential opening with Benzema, potentially on a loan deal. So we'll speak about that first, and then we'll get to Victor. How do you pronounce it, Charlie?
Gyokeres.
Viktor Gyokeres as well. Let's just start with Benzema. Apparently there is links saying that he could come to Chelsea on loan just for the rest of the season. From Al Ittihad. Obviously, he's not very happy there, hasn't really performed. We know he fell out with the previous manager, Santo. And to be honest with you, I think it wouldn't be a bad move. I know we were speaking about it before, Charlie. You disagree.
Yeah, look, I'm not disputing that Benzema's not had a phenomenal career or anything like that. And like the name Karim Benzema obviously still means a lot in football. He's got, obviously, you only have to look back at his career, at how good he's been. But then it also, for me, seems a little bit strange that people would want a stopgap with a 36-year-old Benzema who's basically gone on strike in Saudi at the moment. He's not turned up to their, mid-season training camp or whatever. And people think that's a good idea for 6 months as a solution for our attack. For me, mate, we've been down this road before. He just looks like a Higuain, a Falcao, a Pato, and a Aubameyang. All these sorts of shit deals, basically. Have a look at Benzema, right? Let's be real, phenomenal footballer, right? But he's got a bit of a questionable past at best. Do we need to bring that sort of a sideshow as such into the club, into the dressing room? I'll be real, mate. It's been really nice to not have, sort of like that sort of nonsense, that sort of bad vibes in the dressing room. We seem to have got rid of all that. Do we really need to be bringing in someone like that might do something like that? We don't need to, be doing Benzema a favor or anything like that by trying to rescue him from Saudi, unless we're absolutely sure kind of he's the right player. And then you sort of look at it financially. He's on what, about 3 million quid a week at Al Ittihad? So wage demands, they're not going to let one of their star players go and pay all the wages for him. So there's going to be massive wages. They want a loan fee. And even for 6 months, that's going to be massive. So what sort of effect does, that make in the dressing room potentially? What would Broja and Jackson feel about it? And also, if Benzema comes in on loan, mate, he's not going to agree to come unless he's starting. He's not going to be a bench or a rotation player. If he comes on loan, he's going to want to be starting. And I just don't know if that makes sense for Chelsea. And then you've got the third thing as well for me. Like, if the loan were to go badly, it's then another easy stick to kind of bash the sporting directors, bash the transfer policy with. But then on the flip side, if it were to go well, suddenly you've got a load of pressure from fans, etc., to buy a guy that's going to be 37 years old soon on massive wages and probably not an insignificant fee. And then if you were to do that, it then pretty much negates any chance of signing kind of another proven striker, whether it's Osimhen, Tony, or whoever it would be, meaning you just kind of booting the striker can 12 months down the road again. So for me, it doesn't really make sense. I think this is kind of a big test to see how kind of reactive we're going to be in the market. Last year we jumped all over Joao Felix being available and it was mixed results. And it wasn't the success that, I think a lot of people thought it was going to be. And I just find it hard to believe that the Benzema thing would be any different. Yes, you can look at all the goals, you can look at the Ballon d'Or, but let's be real. Like, is that really the answer? Someone that's never played in the Premier League, someone that's going to be 37 years old, someone that has been basically part-time in Saudi for 6 months, not really doing anything. For me personally, man, I just, other than the fact it's Benzema and he can score goals, I actually don't see any positives to it at all.
Isn't that not enough of a positive?
Well,
score any goals.
yeah, but there's no guarantee that he'd score any goals. We need someone to come in that's going to make an instant impact. You're telling me
Who
that
guarantees you goals? Who guarantees you goals when
Well-
they come at Chelsea anyway?
Well, I mean, look, there's definitely more guarantees than Benzema to score goals for sure.
Really? Who?
Yeah. Do you honestly think Benzema at 37 years old would come in and make an instant impact at Chelsea? For me, I'm just not having it. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like if we're looking at Saudi options, like Roberto Firmino, who would be available from Al Ahly on loan, someone that actually knows the Premier League inside out. I'm not saying he would come to Chelsea, but if you're looking at those two options from Saudi, a move for Roberto Firmino makes a lot more sense based on.
Firmino's not even the goal scorer.
No, it does in terms of someone that obviously hasn't got the goal scoring prowess of Benzema, but actually knows the league a lot better than Benzema does, knows the Premier League, and I think
What
would
does
actually
Firmino offer that a player like Jackson doesn't already have?
No, but if we're looking at
Except
short-term solutions, one, Firmino would be a lot less disruptive to a dressing room. Secondly, he would cost a lot less money. It'd still be big money, but it would be a lot less money than Benzema. And I personally feel that he would settle in much quicker. When you're looking at 6 months, right? You need someone to come in that's going to be ready to hit the ground running straight away. It could easily take Benzema 6 months to adapt to Chelsea. And yeah, it's exciting or it's Benzema, but actually, I think if you just actually think about it and look at the reality of it, for me, the cons far outweigh the pros of bringing him in. So, like, if we did it, I'd obviously support him, but ultimately, for me, mate, it's a big no.
You made good points, but I just disagree with some of the things because first and foremost, it's obvious to, I think, the whole fan base that it is a short-term solution. We're not bringing in Benzema, excuse me, to build around him for Chelsea's future. And I think right now we can all agree that what we need more than ever and what we've missed and lacked this season, as much as we have been scoring more goals than last season, it still has been scoring goals. It's been goals and chances missed that have separated us from getting 3 points as opposed to 1 point out of many in a handful of games this season. So potentially we're not sat where we are in the league right now if we genuinely just had a more prolific goal scorer. Yeah, Jackson has scored goals. Don't get me wrong. Like he already has he got 9 goals, 7, 8, 9, 10 goals.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something along those lines. Which still was the first season at Chelsea. Okay, yes, maybe a hat-trick at Tottenham was bagged in a very easy kind of way, but the numbers are there. However, I still think it's not enough, and Breuer as well is not enough to make you potentially look at least serious moving forward in the league to maintain a sort of respectable position, to climb up further in the league is what we're trying to do now, and potentially earn a spot in Europe as well. I don't think that Jackson and Breuer will do that to you. And look, they might next season, they might start balling out. The season after, they might start balling out. What we actually are looking to do with young players could turn out good in 2-3 years, but right now we're risking gambling with this, it not working out till the end of the season, and then throwing away another prospective season of being in Europe and potentially finishing 11th, 12th again because we're going to say goodbye to more goals. Yes, I know it's not a guarantee that Benzema comes and balls out, but there is enough there to not give you the what if, in my opinion. It outweighs the what if that we've had with young strikers that we've brought in, like Jackson. Okay, if you're using the justification that you don't know how he's going to be if he comes in the Premier League, but, everyone was advocating for Jackson because he, showed a very good second half convincing season at Villarreal. So that was enough to make us think, well, there's potential there. You could definitely come in and as a young player, integrate and hit the ground running in a Premier League club. Benzema, he's won it all. We wanted a winner. We want someone with experience. We want someone that's a target man, and we want someone that will bag you the goals. We create multiple chances. No one's ever in that penalty area to finish it. Breuer doesn't even know where a striker needs to be positionally. Jackson, he'll run around to the wings as well at times. Benzema won't do that for you. And I think that is a big difference. And in terms of, unfortunately, we're having this conversation because we're desperate for things to change in that sort of area. That is why we're having the conversation. But I think you just need to take into consideration what our aims are for this season and to think, how desperate are we to bring in Benzema to potentially solve that, get us some goals, call it a day, get where we need to be in summer, and then obviously look at our long-term options. It also also buys us time to actually look for a striker for summer, maybe do that whole pre-contract agreement for Osimhen. I don't know, but it still is a good stopgap in my opinion. And
how would it be any different from Pato, from Falcao, from Higuain, from Joao Felix? Like we've been down this road so many times before, right? Why would this be any different? It's I get it, it's desperate. For me, right, I'd rather not sign anyone this month rather than sign someone on a short-term loan. We've seen Man United try and do these short-term loan deals in January for centre forwards, and it's crap. Igalo, Weghorst, like the chances of it working are slim to none. And I just don't think like the risk is actually worth what you get. We know we're not going to qualify for the Champions League, right? This squad for me is good enough to qualify for the Europa League. It's good enough to finish 6th or 7th this season with what we've got. And I just don't think like if it was like, you know, the difference between maybe winning something, then yeah, sure, I'd perhaps be more open to it. But I just, for me personally, I'm not seeing like all these amazing benefits to potentially bringing in a Benzema. For me, like as I said, there's way more cons to it than there are pros.
But you've got a risk with any player, though. I get that.
Of course you do. But like, I think when you're looking at short-term things, right?
Yeah.
Is it is that really worth it for 6 months? Like everyone was all well excited about Joao Felix. Look back at it now. Was that worth it? Absolutely not. It was a complete waste of money.
I think a lot of people would say that Felix was one of our better players, though, when he came.
That's because everyone else was shit, though, and we were just excited for the bare minimum.
Yeah.
But would that not be the same with Benzema?
Yeah.
I don't think the attack's been as bad this season. I'm not saying we don't need a forward, but like I would honestly rather sign no one than bring in Benzema for 6 months. But I could be wrong. That's just my opinion.
No, mate, I love it.
Alex, what do you think? Alex, I want to know what you think.
I would take Benzema, to be honest with you. But then I do agree that we've got to be a little bit careful. And I don't think we would pay 100% of his wages. I just don't see how that's viable. We'd have to cut some sort of deal with Al Ittihad. But yeah, for 6 months, I mean, I don't understand. I don't see why it wouldn't perform, because when you talk about Falcao, when you talk about Pato as well, I mean, those guys were really declining. You know, 6 months ago, Benzema had the Ballon d'Or. You know, he's not really. I don't think you can get that much worse in 6 months. He hasn't had a big injury, albeit he's been in a crap league. But you know, if Neymar had gone back to Barcelona after being at PSG for 6 months, I'm sure not that much would have changed. It's the same with a lot of players. And why wouldn't you be motivated by the prospect of playing in the Premier League? You know, I think from his standpoint, he's walking in a team. He is going to be a starter. I don't really think he'd need to negotiate that. I think that would be a given. And you know, he's a player for the younger players to look at. And you know, I don't agree with Johnny Minerals on many things, but I do agree with the fact that you know, I heard him on TalkSport saying these young players don't have anyone to look up to except for Silva and obviously Sterling. And Sterling's not doing anything. Silva's really the only one. So to have a player in there that Jackson and even Broha can say, oh, well, this is actually what it is like to be a top striker, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But I mean, let's move on. Now, I have to admit, I only heard this news recently. We've made an 80 million euro offer for Viktor. Viktor
Gyokeres.
Viktor Gyokeres. Now, I have never seen him play.
Bro, we saw him last year at the playoff final when we watched Cov Luton. He was playing for Coventry.
What?
Yeah, Gyokeres was at Coventry last season in the Championship, and he got a move to Sporting Lisbon this summer, just gone.
Oh my God. Oh,
So
that's
it's his first season at Sporting.
This is his first 6 months in top 5 European leagues.
But he's going to be promising.
You know what though? That see, just hearing that off the top, does that not sound like a Sorloth? You know, flops at Palace and then does unbelievable in Turkey.
Well, it's one of them, isn't it? Like, I just think, look, obviously, like it's record in Portugal, which is, you know, questionable at times, and then subsequently, it's been like by Ben Jacobs and others, it's been, you know, played down as untrue. But obviously, Chelsea have definitely had interest in Gyokeres before. There's definitely like someone that has been looked at. Look, I'm always like a bit, you know, cautious to be wanting to sign players based off a good 6 months. This guy last year was playing in the Championship. He was probably too good for the Championship, right? But he was in the Championship last year. The release clause at Sporting's 100 million euros, which is ridiculous, really. Look, he's done well this season. He's scored, I think he's got like 30 goal. He's got 30 goal contributions in 24 games so far this season, which is great. Which is great.
That is world class, mate.
It's great, but he's played 6 months in Portugal, right? And it's mad that people, like, the way that people try to persuade themselves is ridiculous. Like, people will ignore the previous 6 years and they'll go for a sample size of 6 months because it suits their agenda. It's mad. Like,
how old is he?
He's 20. I think he's 24, maybe 25. But people are prepared to ignore like 6 years of his career, but then they'll just focus on this 6 months at Sporting and think he's amazing. To be honest, like if this were to happen, you can forget about signing a Tony, you can forget about signing an Osimhen, you can forget about anything. This would be the guy, and he might turn out to be a good player, but this is not moving the needle for Chelsea right now. This is just simply not it. So, and for 100, if you're going to spend 100 million euros on a striker, right, you can do a lot better than him. No disrespect to him.
I was just about to say that, mate. I would definitely pick Tony. Or
yeah,
Osimhen.
and people frowned at Tony's 100 million price tag, but accepting that apparently is okay.
I think he's worth
euros this one, but yeah, I mean,
still, it's a small difference, but it's still quite, you know.
Yeah, like 100 million euros, about 88 million quid. So it is.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
there you go. And you're talking.
I mean, to be honest with you, I think as well when you look at players like Tony and Osimhen to an extent as well, you know, these guys are icons of their football club. You know, when you think of Brentford, you think of Tony, and it's very similar with Napoli. But obviously, smaller Premier League teams, for them to hold on to players is so difficult. But I actually think in the modern day, it's getting easier and easier for players, for teams to hold on to their big players because of the inflation with the market prices. You see that with Palace and Elise. You know, he's happy to sign a new contract. You know, and I think you'll see more and more of that. You know, teams like Aston Villa being able to hold on to players, Newcastle, albeit they're not small clubs, but you know, it used to be that we were able to pinch anyone. It's just not like that anymore. But I mean, I can't understand that either. And to be honest with you, that is the kind of signing that will define the reign of these owners, because if that is where they see fit to spend the money, and they can justify that over signing ready-made Premier League talent or world-class Champions League talent who have been performing for years, won titles, and you want a player who was apparently unplayable and played for Coventry. I mean, don't get me wrong, that is an amazing story. I have to say, Charlie, when you said that, I mean, Coventry to Sporting, and then those kind of statistics are, I mean, that is, even by anyone's standards, world class.
He's done well, but 6 months playing in Sporting Lisbon, right? For me, it doesn't equate to suddenly, you know, to someone to pay 100 million euros for you, and then to come in and be the answer in the Premier League. Like for me, like, you need to see a bigger sample size. Yeah, if he came in, potentially he might do quite well. But as this idea that he would be the guy to spearhead the attack and he's like would make a massive difference straight away, he wouldn't. He's basically just a bit more of an experienced Nicholas Jackson at the end of the day. You know, yes, his numbers are obviously he's putting up good numbers in Portugal right now, but
I mean, they're tremendous numbers, mate.
It's good. It's good numbers, but you know, I think we've got to be realistic for what it is. This is a 6 month sample size. I said it about Marcus Rashford. Anyone can do it for one season. Anyone can do it for 6 months or whatever. What the real like thing is can you do it for season on season? Can you repeat that 2-3 seasons on the spin? Because let's be real, mate. Anyone can have a good season. Anyone can have a good 6 months. So, you know, it's really important not to do impulsive purchases of someone like having a good 6 months. That's why I'm always cautious about signing players off the back of having a good World Cup or off the back of having a good Euros. Like, you need a bigger sample size than just 6 months.
Plus, you'd be more concerned about a player like that coming into the Premier League than a player that's played in Europe at the highest level, no matter if he's coming from Saudi or not, you know? Because I know you use the argument that you don't know how he'll fit in the Premier League, but for me, it's a bigger risk to take bringing in a kid that's just, you know, coming up and playing senior football at a high level in another league in Europe, yes, but the Premier League is obviously, as we know, a different level. So I'd be more concerned.
I think if I was, looking to bring him in, and obviously there's some intent, I would see if I could get some form of a loan deal, which obviously wouldn't be accepted. I can't imagine Sporting would do that. But if you get a loan deal and see how that comes, then it makes sense. But otherwise, I'm looking at it, and I do think doesn't really. You can't justify it. You can't justify it. But I have to say, mate, those are world-class numbers. I think
Yeah.
I think even when you just say it's good, I mean that is world-class. But 6 months is 6 months. But also, you say to yourself, 6 months, you've hit the ground running like that at any level. That is exceptional. Portugal's not the best league, but it's not France. It's a good level, and the amount of players that have come to the Premier League and flopped from Portugal is much lower than a lot of the other leagues.
Portuguese league's got a good hit rate in terms of signings from Portugal to the Premier League. Like the success rate is pretty good. I'll be honest, like it does transfer pretty well. Same with France. But yeah, in terms of if you're going to be looking at spending 100 million euros on a centre forward, that like you can do much better than him.
Yeah, I mean, we can laugh at the price tag because it is quite ridiculous. But I think
Release clause, but so like he's not worth that. But like this is where these clubs are smart.
No, I know, but that's the thing. I mean, why would they let go mid-season of their best player that's bagging them all these amazing numbers? And
well, they wouldn't. They wouldn't. But if they get the money, then they would. Everyone's got their price. But
and that's why I'm saying you can't really laugh on it on their behalf because of course
it's smart. It's smart business. These clubs always do that. Sign relatively cheap, whack in a high release clause, and then it's win-win.
100%. Now, this is the one that will split many Chelsea fans down the middle. The special one, Jose Mourinho, has departed Roma literally 10 minutes before we started recording this podcast. Now, me personally, I was on Football Joe last year saying bring in Mourinho. I didn't want Pochettino, and I know I backed Pochettino, and I still don't think he should be sacked at this current moment in time. I never wanted him as my first choice. Mourinho was my first choice. And now we have I don't want to say the opportunity because Mourinho has to accept as well, to potentially bring the Portuguese man in, most likely in the summer. I mean, how do you guys feel about that? Are you torn like me, or do you see a real opportunity?
Mate, for me, there's no opportunity. Like I love him, and he's amazing, and he'll always have like a special place in Chelsea fans' hearts. But like, if you actually, of course, you think, 3.0 would be amazing, love to have him back. But if you actually think about the reality of it, it's just not a good fit at all. Look how you could see that turning sour so quickly. You look at what Jose Mourinho likes from a squad, from a team. It's not what Chelsea are right now. Like he does not fit what Chelsea are trying to do at this point in time. The ownership would never appoint someone like him. And we got to accept that, let's just enjoy the memories we've had from him. And as good as Mourinho is and has been, I don't think he's the answer to coming back to Chelsea. Look, I'd love to see him back in the Premier League. But ultimately, for me, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Too much has changed in football. The club's going in a completely different direction. Jose's not going to work with a young squad like this. Yes, you could say he'd install discipline. Yes, you could say he'd install, a winning mentality as such. But Jose wants proven players, winning players, that are ready to come in, straight away. But I just feel like as good as he is, I just feel like his career is on a bit of a downward trajectory. Obviously, he did.
I wouldn't say that.
No, I'll tell you why. Because United, obviously, he done well there. He won a couple of trophies, and then it went a bit sour. Fine. Ends up at Roma, does well, wins a Conference League in his first season, gets to Europa League final. But again, one thing about Jose is, he'll come in and make an impact, but it goes sour very, very quickly. As quickly as it might go well, it can just as quickly go the opposite direction. I just think if Chelsea are looking to move forward as a club, as appealing as it would be, bringing in Mourinho back for a third stint would be a backwards move, in my opinion.
What do you think, Nina?
It's like between your head and your heart. It's like reason and
Oh, you'd love it. You'd love it, but reality is different.
yeah,
Isn't
no,
it?
look, I completely agree with the points that Charlie makes. And again, it's like if I think as a fan and just pure like football, like love and what he did for Chelsea, then my head's screaming yes, or my heart's screaming yes. But my head is looking at the bigger picture, and I'm trying to sort of think about it. And in terms of how Jose fits at the club and what the owners are trying to do, and I just don't think they'll see eye to eye. And I think it might cause more chaos within the club at some point down the line, and it will undo, like Charlie said, everything we've been trying to build in this new regime. And a lot of people will say, well, we're not really far down into a project at all. We're not really doing anything that's showing you there is a process worth trusting here. So why not? But, you know, actually it is true that you don't know that it's going to be as smooth as it was. And I think it just will cause more more chaos, more storm within the club. But when I look at things like discipline and mentality and winning and attitude and fire and all of that, I think, you know, Jose installs that in a squad any day of the week. But I think we have to look at the players we have too. They don't strike me as Jose players really either. So I don't really know how he does with them. But, you know, just imagine the title, Jose back to Chelsea 20 years later again. And it's all, you know, the spell again. But again, I just think it's much more of the ideology about it that excites us. But if we're looking now in terms of what we're trying to build for the future and how we're headed, I just don't think it will be the right thing. And it just will be another case of maybe the owners trying to please Chelsea fans if that happens, even though I don't think they themselves would be, you know, keen on that. But again, I think, you know, imagine a Jose in the dressing room. We talk about discipline, we talk about lack of mentality, we talk about, you know, bookings that just would never run if Jose was here, and these are all things he probably could change, but again, I just don't think it's realistic or it's going to be beneficial for the long run. Maybe for a short term again, but again, we're not looking here for short-term solutions. We're supposed to be looking as far into the future as we can to build something sustainable.
Yeah, I'd love to have him for a third stint. I would love it.
I think we would all love it. We would all love it, of course. But yeah, like when you actually properly think about it, it just doesn't make any sense.
No, not at the moment. But I tell you what, if Mourinho goes on to another club and does well, and hopefully Poch does well and picks things up, and you know we have Poch for maybe a few years, you know, squad becomes a little bit more experienced. Mudryk, he's got pace and a bit of end product as well, you know.
Devil's advocate, you.
Smells in together. Mourinho says, you know what? Why not? You know, that's what I would love to see, but yeah, not for a few years at least. Definitely not the right time. Now, let's just talk about the season, guys. I mean, obviously, we're going to go into what we think is going to happen. Let's almost look at this as a just over halfway review. How would we review what we have seen this season so far? Let's start off with the ownership, and then we'll go with the management, and we'll talk about the players as well. Nina?
Are we talking about how we are currently or how we'll be at the end?
How we have been, and then we'll go into what we actually think will happen.
How we have been, I think if I compare my expectations to pre-season and where I thought Chelsea would be at this point in time, then definitely far off of what that was, because I'd say maybe, I don't know, a lot of us were very excited, and I think a lot of us based our predictions for Chelsea based off what we saw in pre-season, based off the transfers we made, and maybe that just had a whole sort of misconception around how realistic things would be, you know, kicking off on the pitch. Look, we're not where we want to be in the league. I think we can all agree. Some of the results we've had, I mean, what results? We've dropped points and we've conceded in games at home where, you know, in the history of Chelsea, you know, we've never seen before, and it's not been acceptable. Yes, we said time would be needed, but I still think in terms of what we could have done with the squad and with the club till this point could have still been a little bit higher to what we are. And I still think that based off the moves we made, based off the players we brought in, based off how many games we now have had to still maybe build something a little bit more sustainable in terms of a playing style, is not yet that identifiable, and that's reinforced in how inconsistent our results have been. You know, we just think that a win is going to lead on to another one perhaps, and then we've lost or we've drew in the second or the third game. So not where we want to be is the answer, not as expected as perhaps I would have liked, but I guess that's just the reality.
Yeah, I mean, just to come off of that, I mean, I thought that we would be so much better than what we have been. I said top four is a given. I said we'd be pushing up, at the top of the table. I said that on Sky. I ridiculed Spurs fans. Obviously, we got Poch, and obviously that was wrong. What I said, but I do still think that we have an awful lot in the arsenal, and I think the real question is how long it's going to take for it to all come out. I do think it will, and that's why I'm still, not asking for the ownership to sack Pochettino, because I do think there's something there. And as weak as his tactics have been, I will be the first to say that I think Poch's in-game management is some of the worst I've seen from a Chelsea manager. I think it's horrific, but I think his other qualities are so good. And we haven't really had the time to see that, because when we talk about man management and being able to manage a squad and develop players, these are just not things that I believe you can see in 6 months. I really just don't believe in it. And people say, I trust progress, not the process, right? That is the process, making progress. But I don't agree with that at all. I think that, a process is all about ups and downs. And sometimes you'll have big downs and sometimes you'll have a few ups as well. And if we have anything to go by with Arsenal and Liverpool, the way they've done things, albeit slightly different, it tells you that when you rebuild a squad, it just doesn't click straight away. And actually, if you really think about it, it's the biggest rebuild in world football, Chelsea FC. It's not a case of just changing the players or just changing the management or just changing the owner, because the owner could have kept everything the way it was. I mean, we had a perfectly decent team in place, but we've decided to cut out everything that we had that was associated with Abramovich and bring on the Bowley and Clear Lake effects, which, look, is absolutely fine. We always needed a rebuild. We were never pushing for Premier League titles after we won with Conte, and there's clearly a reason for that. We lack quality in the transfer market. We made some good signings, but we didn't make enough of them, which is why we didn't have a well-rounded squad. And now we're looking into the future and we're saying, okay, rather than just taking one piece of the puzzle every season, i.e. your Lukaku's, your big money signings that need to come in and perform straight away, let's spread out the costs. Let's increase the risk, but also the reward's going to be better as well. I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it. So I think it's a bit like what you said earlier, Charlie. I think the squad is definitely good enough to finish in a European place. Champions League would be very difficult. But yeah, as long as we get any form of European football, I mean, that is ultimately still a letdown from where we were, but it is a step up from where we've been. So we can only look forward to that, really.
Yeah, well, I would agree, mate. Like, I think perhaps a lot of us maybe had slightly unrealistic expectations at the start of the season, purely based on the amount of money we've spent, because I think a lot of people just equate money spent with success, when that used to be the case, but now it's not enough. You need an identity, you need a DNA, you need a culture. Like, you need so much more now than just money. So I think, for all of us, it kind of made us think that we were going to do better than we actually have done. Ultimately, this squad is talented, yes, but right now, the players we've got, and how they're performing at this point in their careers is not good enough for Champions League football. Right now, this squad at the moment is at Europa League level at best, I think, at this point in time. It can certainly develop into a Champions League squad and a Premier League title challenging squad in the next few years, I think. But I think people have to accept that right now it is a Europa League squad at best, and that's where we're at. I often find I've always feel there's a bit of a sense of entitlement and almost like a arrogance amongst certain Chelsea fans that we shouldn't have to go through what every other club has had to go through at some point in time in terms of a down period and not doing that well. There seems to be this entitlement amongst Chelsea fans that because it's Chelsea and we've won everything that there is in the last 20 years, that we shouldn't have to go through a couple of crap seasons to rebuild and then get back to the top. Like, people just think that shouldn't happen. Like, I don't understand it. You know, none of us want this, but the reality is that football goes in cycles, and at some point you're going to be shit for a few years before moving back up. It's happened to every single team, and yet when it happens to us, people can't get their heads around it and just feel that it shouldn't happen to us. It's just a ridiculous.
Do you know why? Do you know why? It's because of the amount of money we spent. Not every team that's gone through a rebuild has had $1 billion to spend. That's exactly what it always comes down to. But I agree with you, but it just is that case.
Yeah, the billion thing is, like, I don't want to sort of get into like numbers and that, but like the billion is including, it's like a media thing, because it's like it bangs the headline. Like, we haven't actually. What I mean is, we haven't spent £1 billion because that's including all the add-ons. All of it is not even for the first
998.
team anyway. But all of it's not even for the first team anyway. And like 3/4 of those players that have come in have been injured for most of the season. So we're not actually using what we spent. I'm not like what we've had on the pitch this season is good enough to be higher up or better than we're doing. But ultimately, I think some of the judgment might be a little bit unfair because we've not been able to use. I'm not asking for a fully fit squad. I know that's almost impossible, but just to maybe have one or two missing. We've not been able to choose from everything we've got available or anywhere near close to that. And that does have a massive effect when you're trying to build a new team and a young team. You need continuity. When you're having to change the lineup every single week because players aren't available, it makes a difficult job even more difficult.
Yeah, but then other like teams, like I look at Tottenham, and Tottenham have had so many injuries and so many key players that started this really good season.
But they're starting from a completely different point. Like they've already got a proven Premier League squad. They've got a lot more experience. They do. It's Tottenham and Chelsea is not comparable at all in terms of
it's a new manager, and it's a new manager.
But it's fine. It's a new manager, but like in terms of what you're working with, it's like it's night and day in terms of what you've come into with a squad. Like that squad is ready.
I agree. They've had lots of new additions that have, that Ange has worked out how they fit, and when there are respective injuries, they can still play that same style of football, like we saw against United. Like, compared the two squads, Man United had injuries out as well, but you could still see, Tottenham playing the way they did.
No, I'm not disputing that he's not bought a style of play and like he's implemented it very quickly. I'm not disputing that. But what I mean is, it's a lot easier to do that when you've got more experienced players, and you're not having to develop everyone at the same time. Like for me, Ange's done a great job, but it's a totally different starting point.
Yeah, and I literally said that after the fan cam the last game, because people said in the comments that they're always talking about Postecoglou, but ultimately, they've got Son, they've got Kulusevski, some very good players.
James Maddison, like they've got good experienced players. Like,
but also they hit the signings on the head, and that's where we can admit we did fuck it up.
Yeah,
right.
That's good.
And that's why Pochettino deserves a little bit of leeway. That's one of the reasons. Now, as I said, there's obviously things he can do better, but ultimately his strengths are things that you can really judge over a longer period. So 6 months doesn't even give him the opportunity to show how good his man management is and all the rest of it. So I think it would be very, very harsh to get rid. But also, the ownership have only given him a 2-year contract. So the worst case is in the summer, you're not happy and you part ways, which actually I still think would be a mistake. I just don't really see anyone else that...
Because you're just starting again.
Fancy, Yeah, you're right, Charlie.
It'd be the third time. We'd be starting again for the third time in 2 years.
Yeah.
But also, you've actually had a full season to build with Poch, and that's why this month is so big as well. Obviously, Middlesbrough in the semi-final, the second leg, Aston Villa in the FA Cup. We do well in those two competitions. Obviously, Carabao will be great. It really defines our season, because you'll either come out of it saying we won something or we didn't win anything. And if we don't win anything, it's going to be the same old. Poch can't win. He's not a winner. He doesn't have the winning mentality. We're just turning into a Chelsea, a London-based Brighton FC. So I understand why people are so pessimistic about it. I do get it, but I also think you, like Charlie said, you've just got to ride it out sometimes for a few years. But I mean, we can all say this as well because we go to the games. It's actually a lot harder to watch it when you spent all that money. Like Middlesbrough for me. Oh,
no, it was awful.
Some people spent hundreds just to get up there
and slept at the train station as well.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's
and then people expect us to not say anything when it's not good enough. Like, that's not what this is about.
No, you absolutely have. Like, there's a difference between you can still support the manager and the project,
but you can criticize.
But you can criticize. Like, there's a difference. Like, just because you're criticizing something doesn't mean you're you want the manager out or anything like that. I think that people can't seem to understand the difference between that. You can support something but be critical of aspects of it at the same time. And there has been a lot to criticize this season, but I don't know. I just look at it and I just think ultimately, if we decide to part ways in the summer, it is what it is. But you're just tearing everything down and starting yet again. Like this, how many managers we've been through already under Bowley? We've had Tuchel, Potter, Lampard again, Bruno Salter for a game. Now
Bruno Salter.
Poch is the fifth one, right? If you include interims, that's 5 managers or coaches, whatever you want to call them, in less than 2 years. If we make another change in the summer, that's a 6th different person in charge in about 2 years of ownership. Yeah. And we're trying to move away from the Roman model of doing things. That's mad.
Do you know what else raised our expectations though? It's the fact that how long has it been since Chelsea had this little fixtures as well? We said that not being in Europe was going to be a good thing for training and for spending time with players, for spending time on the training pitch, as opposed to having, a heavy fixture load, which we've had in years when we've played Champions League football. And now we said, but it's a good thing, actually. Let's look at the positive side of that you get more time, that that what's the excuse? We're playing a game a week at times. Now we've got obviously a winter break that gives you more time too. And it's those excuses too that, well, not excuses, circumstances rather, that, raised our expectations higher. So there was a few things that we said would give us the advantage maybe over some teams, buy us more time, have less games. Some of these players haven't played this much football anyway. So we said it's a good thing that, we're not going to put all this pressure on them to have to battle between, domestic cups, Champions League football and Premier League fixtures.
Lovely. Well, no, I think there's been some really good points, guys. I mean, is there anything else that we wanted to bring in just before we round it out, or you think we pretty much?
There's not that much else happening. It's weird, isn't it? With the last 2 windows, with the last summer being mad and then last January being crazy as well. It's mad that
this day last year, I remember they said Enzo Fernandez wasn't happening anymore. Do you remember that day where it was like?
Yeah, there was a lot of that, isn't it? I feel so weird now being given how busy the last 2 windows have been, to be 16 days into a transfer window and basically fuck all's happened.
Unbelievable. It's going to be a quiet one. Nice to have a rest, though, isn't it? Nice to have a little rest. Not just for the pockets of Bowley, because they're pretty deep pockets. But, we have to report on it. So there's no transfers. We get a bit of time off. But listen, always a pleasure. Thank you for everyone. If you have been listening, 43 minutes, it's been a really good episode, actually. It's gone from not being that much to talk about to actually quite a few things. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Nina, as well. Listen, guys, if you agree or disagree with anything that we have said on the episode, let us know in the comments. It's always good to, see if you actually agree. Not so much recently people have agreed with me, but generally, it's been all right. So we'll see. And listen, we'll be back for another episode. Obviously, quite a long time until the next game. And up the Chelsea.